Hello, everyone. I want to take a moment and talk about something that you'll all be familiar with, but perhaps you never considered its origins. In 1848, someone was born who influenced industries for all time. These were industries that he could have never dreamed of at the time. Vilfredo Pareto was incredibly smart. And during his life, he worked as an engineer, a sociologist, an economist, a political scientist, and even a philosopher. He was the father of something that I guarantee you've all heard of, the 80-20 rule. The Pareto Principle, as it was later come to be known as, was originally identified by Pareto when he was researching the distribution of wealth in Italy. Basically, his research essentially showed that 20% of people hold 80% of all wealth. In later years, it was proven true in most countries and cultures throughout the world. Those ratios may be deviated slightly, but in general, the rule held. A relatively small part of the population accounts for the largest portion of wealth. Over the course of history, that rule has also been proven to apply to most things that we encounter in life. For example, 80% of healthcare resources are used by 20% of patients. In sports, 80% of results come from 20% of the players. Microsoft even found that 20% of the most reported software bugs account for 80% of the errors and crashes. So based on that information, they upended their whole model. They implemented a process to address that 20% of bugs and errors first, which actually corresponded with a dramatic reduction in support calls. Along those same lines, it was discovered that 80% of software is written in 20% of the time. It's actually that last 20% that takes the most amount of time and is actually the hardest to complete. So I'm sure you will relate when I tell you that this also applies to business. For example, 80% of customer complaints typically arise from 20% of possible products and services. 80% of delays in schedules arise from 20% of the possible causes for those delays. 80% of your profits typically come from about 20% of your products and services. And 80% of your total company revenue is actually produced, on average, by about 20% of your employees. There was an author named Timothy Ferriss in his book called The 4-Hour Workweek. He even talks about identifying his top 20% of customers, those bringing in the most revenue, and his top 20% of complaining customers, those who have the most complaints. And then he used that information. What he found is that some of the most time-consuming complaint customers were actually bringing in relatively low amounts of revenue anyway. So what was his solution? He fired them. He used the information that he learned to fire his customers those customers that essentially weren't worth the effort to him any longer. So as you think about the 80-20 rule, the Pareto Principle, how can you use that information to your advantage personally and as a leader? First, we need to understand the Pareto Principle can be applied to productivity. So if you think about everything that you and your team do on a daily basis and consider what are the most valuable activities, now those top 20% activities. So now apply the Pareto Principle to that. So once you understand that 20% of your activities account for 80% of your results, it'll help you better manage your day and lead your team. So identify those 20% activities and set those as your priority at the start of each day. Imagine if you can check off those activities at the beginning of each day. That will mean that you have already are on your way to helping to secure 80% of your results. Then, as a leader, you can actually use that information. So this means you should be teaching your team to do the exact same thing. Have them identify what those top 20% activities are and ensure that they're completing those early in the day as quickly as possible. That will help them be more successful, and it'll also help you and your team as a whole be more successful. The last thing I want to mention is that those top 20% activities, they should be re-examined periodically because they can change over time. They change based on priorities in your life, based on experience. A variety of things can impact those. So you should reevaluate those top 20% activities from time to time. So I hope you found that information valuable. While the numbers might deviate, like I said, they might change slightly, the rule generally holds true in most areas. I encourage you to look more into the Pareto Principle and then sit down and identify your top 20% activities so that you can start improving your success today. Have an amazing day, and remember my book, The Indispensable Leader, was released today and can be ordered online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, as well as other book retailers. Check it out on those sites directly, or visit my website at beindispensable.com for all the links. Once again, that's beindispensable.com. And don't forget to be indispensable.